And welcome to the Illuminates of Thanateros and me. And today we have with us Nikki Wyrd. Thank you for joining us.
My absolute pleasure.
Nikki is the editor of the Psychedelic Press Journal, a director of Breaking Convention, and has been a member of the Illuminates of Thanateros for 29 years now. It's quite a while. And has essentially done all the jobs that I've done. Is a former section head, has been a novice guide, has been a sponsor of a section, and is currently a priest of chaos and an elder of the IoT.
Ooh. That all sounds very grand, doesn't it?
Well, there is quite a lot of body of work underneath all of those titles. I mean, they sound fantastic, but when you actually have done all the work, then you kind of realise what the title actually means.
Yeah, there's an old saying in the administrative world, which is the grander your title, the less you get paid for the more work you do. So that's how we reward our fellow pact members, including ourselves, by just going, we will give you this fantastic title for doing loads of work.
And over the years, you have done loads of work.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Mm-hmm. So what first brought you to the IoT and chaos magic?
So when I was about 18, 19, I moved out of my sort of family home and moved into shared houses and did exciting things with exciting people. And one of the things that I was really interested in at that point was tarot cards, mostly because I'd been playing the little tabletop games that you play with little figures and stuff. Yeah. So there was a load of us that would get together and do that. And the local games shop had tarot cards on a cabinet in the corner. And I was like, oh, these are very interesting. So I bought a copy of the deck that I liked the look of, which was the Thoth tarot cards. And I got the book to go with it. And I started to read about different types of magical stuff. And I'd always been very interested and fascinated by divination methods. My grandmother and my great-grandmother used to do divinations for their neighbours using tea leaves and crystal ball, which I now own myself. And so I'd always grown up with this sort of idea of palmistry, graphology, all of those different things. So getting these tarot cards was a natural progression from that kind of thing. And the Book of Thoth, which goes with the deck designed by Frida Harris and Aleister Crowley, is very chaos magic-y because it joins together lots of different things. It has astrology, Egyptian gods, and various other things as well that it sort of all weaves together. So I quite like this sort of mixed up stuff. And then the goth that lived downstairs in the shared house that I lived in, Simon, he had a copy of Believe It Null and Psychonaut. And that's how I first heard about chaos magic, was via that particular book. Cut to a couple of years later, and I'd read lots of comparative mythology stuff and was very interested in that idea, and I started to do meditation and applied to the IoT because I'd heard of them by that point, and got to meet them, felt incredibly at home. Just went, this is really good. This is somewhere where I can practice the things that I've been reading about, and it's going to bring me out and actually make me do these things. And it was all very spooky and exciting because you had to write off on a piece of paper to the post office box. And it was all done with sort of like letters, and no names were given out at all. It was very, very secret and special. So it was like a proper sort of like, what are we doing? And yes, it was really, really nice. And I got there and they were all really friendly. It was like, would you like a cup of tea? And I felt that I'd found the people that I could do interesting stuff with. And they were such an incredibly varied bunch as well. So that's how I initially met people. And at that point, I was living in Norwich, and so I would travel down to London to go to temple meetings there. And we also had a few people in Norwich. There's about 3 or 4 of us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us at that point, and we had a little temple of our own there, and some of those people went on to do quite exciting stuff as well. One of them moved to Brighton and then to Australia and got involved in organising pride marches and things. So very pleased to have seen that, because they started off very shy, withdrawn, and then just blossomed, and it was wonderful to see that. I could see the effect that this do what you want to do had on people, in the way that if you did that within your magical practice, but then it blossoms out into your real life, and that was just lovely.
It's always fantastic to see, isn't it, when somebody first joins and how a person changes and develops. It's great to see in yourself as well.
It is, yes. I've noticed sort of every time you look in the mirror, you're like, oh yes, and yes, it gives you a difference, because there's as you know, there's the practice that you can do where you do look in the mirror and you try and see yourself either as you really are at that moment or as you would like to be. So you're aware of what the world is seeing of you, and then that can change how you project yourself into the world, which is to do with posture, expression, how healthy you are, did you sleep last night, all of those kind of things change your appearance. So you can work on all of that stuff.
So 29 years is quite a long time. But I remember when I first joined the Pact, you were a adept then.
Yep.
And it was before you became section head. And that was around 15 and a half, nearly 16 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So what is it about the group that's made you want to be a member for such a long time?
So one of the things that when I first met people in the IoT and joined it, there were far more men than there were women at that point. There were maybe, not even a quarter women. And I was like, there needs to be more women in it. So I needed to I wanted to work on that and help other females of various persuasions to come into the Pact, which has happened. Are we up to half now?
I would say we are around 50%, yeah.
Very good. So that was one of the things that I wanted to change. And also when I first joined, it was very much sort of black robes and sort of like martial kind of wah, shouty type of stuff, and running in a circle anti-clockwise, and shouting and pointing at things with your wand, which is, that works. I'm not dissing that method whatsoever. But when you've done it for the 10th time in a meeting, it doesn't have the same power. So I wanted to bring a bit of variation to the group, so I could see that there was a long-term project there for me to just bring different ways of organising a group. So it wasn't necessarily a circle with a middle, but there was other configurations that you could make, other exciting shapes that you could stand people in the temple, and that you could make them walk around, for example, in the shape of a labyrinth and get them to go backwards and forwards and in and out. So they weren't quite sure whether in the middle or the outside or where they were or what they were doing, and using that confusion as part of the gnosis. So a lot of the reason that I've stayed in it for so long is that I could see that there was things that I could bring to it to improve it, and in my own small way, and also that would improve me by doing that, because when I joined I certainly wasn't in any way a sort of a leader at all. So it's been really difficult for me to get over the sort of the cultural hurdles that you have as just a person who's not come from a particularly well-off background, but just to go, right, I will take control and let's see what we can do. If I suggest different instructions for people, what will they do with that? And I like the IoT because you can do that and they will come back with responses to it, suggestions for improvement, and going, no, I'm not going to do that, maybe we should do it this way instead. And I like that honesty, that authentic back and forth that you can have with different people when you come up with a ritual. I found that incredibly good because you learn so quickly. So it's really brought things out in me, and I think I've brought things out in the Pact that have been really healthy for both of the things there. I hope that I've managed to carry on the legacy of being disciplined, yet also having charm, which is the feel that I got from the people that were section heads immediately before myself. They were very much, this is what we will do these things properly, and like keeping things like running very sort of tight, but also with a smile and a chat, and just being each person being themselves and not feeling any pressure to conform in any way at all. So just being allowed to, each individual being brought out of themselves, like we've been discussing as the theme here. And the reason that I've stayed in it for so long, I came for the magic and I stayed for the people very much. But I was thinking about this earlier, I also stayed because one of the things that you get when you go to an actual physical meeting is that you come into direct contact with various currents of magic. So because we have people from all over the planet that belong to our group, it means that I've contacted and met people and been instructed by them very briefly sometimes, but also sometimes much longer, in all sorts of currents ranging from Russian martial arts to Polish folk magic to New Zealand Maori magic type culture, and all sorts of other things. So things from various North America and South America, and loads of different places from Europe. And that's without even starting to think about the more modern currents and different things that people are working with. So I've encountered directly people that work with a wide array of different techniques, styles and mythologies. And there's no other place I could go to learn that. I can read about it, but it's not the same as someone standing there and talking in depth for an hour and doing the ritual with you, or the practice, whatever it might be, because quite often the things we do are body work rather than just rituals. So that for me is why I've stayed, because I've learned things that I wouldn't have learned otherwise, because I wouldn't have known they existed, let alone be able to look them up and find them or anything else. So it's a really lovely way of not only sharing your own stuff with other people and getting them to do things to help your work progress, but also you join in with all of their things as well. And it's like a big sort of encyclopedic, no, that's not quite the word, like a big sort of smorgasbord of different things that go on, and you just sort of get little tasters of this, that and the other, and some things you really like and you go, oh, I'll follow that up and do more things. So it's led me down some really interesting paths. And also I really like a lot of the people in the pack. Not every single person, but I like that I don't like everybody, if you see what I mean. They're not all people that I would necessarily hang out with in a social sense, but I think that's really healthy, because that means that you're meeting people that bring something different to the world. Otherwise you just live in a tiny echo chamber, don't you? So it's nice to have that. And I think pretty much at the moment everyone's really lovely in the pack, so that's really good. It goes through different waves, doesn't it?
Yes, and it goes through different changes, which I think is quite right. And we don't have a stagnant group. We have a group that's constantly changing and evolving, and different people coming in and going out of it.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, they just come in and they're here for like maybe a year or so, as you know, year or two, and then they've learned what it is that they needed to get from it, and they go off and do their own thing. And I'm still friends with a lot of people that have done that, so they're no longer in the pact, but I'm still in touch with them on social media. Some of them I'm still sort of on visiting in their homes kind of sort of level, because I know them so well, and we've just forged really good personal friendships, which is, I think that speaks a lot to the success of the group, is that people no longer belong to it, but they're still very friendly with us, to the vast majority of them. So.
Yeah. Well, I found one of the interesting things is that, as well as being the pact, we are also as part of this even wider network of people who've left, people who've never joined, but we've had to meet them in other groups or other activities and get on with. So it's not a group that lives in isolation. There's all sorts of connections of all sorts of people who have or never have been members.
Yes. That's something that's nice, that's developed over the years. So rather than it being this sort of secret thing, it's now sort of private, but it's not so secretive in the same kind of way as it had to be back in the day.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us. It's been excellent.
My absolute pleasure.
And I hope to see you in the circle very soon.
Yes, doubtless I will, sister. Thank you very much, Sora Brigantia.
Thank you.